want to show you how we can take this simple journal sketchbook and turn it into sort of a masterboard book where we're going to be gluing in lots of different pieces on different pages and using it to make junk journal ephemera or tags or lots of different elements that we can use in scrapbooks and in junk journals. How we can utilize this and make it into fun different little projects. So to start out with, I simply just picked this up at Walmart. It was really cheap, really cheap. It was just a couple dollars. And I left this in here for now just to show you. It's just a sketch pad. There's 70 sheets. It's from Pin and Gear. And I like the fact that the size was 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches because it means I could just keep it right on my work table and it's not too big. It's just going to be too much and I'm not going to have room on my tabletop. If you're like me, there's always punches and stamps and inks and all kinds of paper, so there's not a whole lot of room. So this was just the perfect size. This part will pull out up here at the top, so I can put whatever kind of pretty paper that I want in there. But for now, let me go through and show you some of the things that I've done with these. I'll just go page by page. I've got, I don't know, 7 or 8 pages. So all of this basically, except for one page, is just been scraps, completely scraps. And on this page, I just cut them into squares. I glued them on in various places. And then I just used a black Sharpie pen to put fake stitch lines all over. So with this kind of page, I've made 2 things here. First, I made a mini note card. This was just a 3x6 piece of white cardstock that I folded in half. And then I cut a 3x3 out of this and it gets glued on the top. Now, one thing you could do, because this is wide enough, is you could cut a 3x6 piece right out of here and fold it in half, and then you would have a front and a back with that same look on it. The other thing I did, and one thing I liked about the width of this, is I made a mini envelope with this one. Isn't that cute? So it would kind of go match with it. And to do this size, I just needed a 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 sheet, and then made that into an envelope. So that was a fun way to utilize this page. Of course, you can make tags, all kinds of ephemera from that. The next page. So for this page, I really utilized an old book. I had some little scraps that I used from an old book page, and I ended up just gluing them in different spots and pieces. And then I wanted this to have kind of a pink overall look to it with a pink hue, and so then I just glued on little pieces of pink here and there, and I've got an old music sheet, and then once again I just used the Sharpie pen to put on the stitch lines. And so with that one, I used an old junk envelope, and I just decorated the front of it with it. And I used a different page for this one. But that was all I did with this. I did not do the back because it's going to be glued into a junk journal. So that was a fun way to utilize that page. For the next one was this, and this ended up being my most favorite so far in my book. And you can see from this I've made these. But the way I did this was really fun. I just ended up using this punch. And the squares that it punches out, it's almost 1.5, a little less than 1.5 inches. And that seemed to be a good size to fit perfectly into this journal page. Of course, if you don't have a square punch, you can just cut it into whatever size squares that you want that's gonna fit good in the journal size that you might be using. Or if you're just doing a masterboard, you could just do 1-inch squares and that would be great. So what I did on these, let me show you super fast. I've just got a piece here. You can see I've already made a heart one here. But I just put it in, punched, and then I used some distress ink. And I have my sponge, and I went around the outside edge of each one before I glued them on. So it kind of gave it that almost quilt-like look, kind of like it's been actually sewn and gone down in the sheet. So I did that. Move this out of the way. And then for this one, I didn't want these lines on here to be quite as dark using the Sharpie So I took a Bic pen and I just went around the edge of the whole thing using just straight stitch lines. And then when you glue them all together side by side, it really gives it a pretty look. So this would be like this one here. But anyhow, that's how I did all this page. And then it just makes some pretty quilt-like tags. You could do the same thing on here where we made this note card, but just cut. This is 3 by 3. And also this would be big enough to make an envelope with too. So there's so many fun things you can do just by having these. And one thing nice is when you're working on other projects and you've got just a little bitty scrap that's left over, it's perfect just to go ahead. You already have your glue and everything else out to just pop it on the page as you go. And sometimes I'll have different pages open at different times, or I'll think, oh, that would work good on, you know, this page back here or whatever. So that's how I've been doing that. So that was a fun little tool to utilize for that. So the next page is where I used this one. I took an index card and I inked the edges and then flipped it over. And then I just cut out the size of this index card, you know, and traced around it and then glued that onto the front of this. And then on this I went ahead and put the stitch lines in. I didn't do it on this whole page yet because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, but that's what I ended up doing. And then I used this tab punch and just a little sheet of blue, and I punched out a tag and glued it on there for that. So because I inked the back of this, I'll probably end up inking the front of this. I don't know, but it's cute like that too. So there's so many fun ways to utilize that. And then I just end up putting this in here. And I think that turned out really pretty. It'll look pretty in my journal page. For the next one, I have a Christmas theme. So I just went through and had scraps left over from that. Did the exact same thing. Just did squares, you know, vertical, long, tall ones, and then some, like that one went across the whole page. But just kind of put it together. And with that one, I just made another little mini note card. And of course you can make lots of same kind of thing. You could do this. So many ideas. You can make belly bands, but that's one way I did that. And this is big enough that you could use an A2 card size and then cut this down to size around it and glue it on the front. And that would be a really pretty base back for that as well. So that's that page. The next page I have is I just took little thin strips like these. Were left over from when I cut out tags on them. You can see that. And I just would trim up the edges on all of these and then just glued them down. Now I only went halfway up with my little fake stitches on this one because I do like to make these pretty little flowers out of this. And you can have the stitches on there too, but these I sell a lot of these in my Etsy shop and I don't have the lines on them. But this is perfect just to come in and punch a hole. So I'll do that. This is just a 2-inch hole punch. And I can lift this up and come in on the side and just punch that straight out whenever I'm ready to. So the way I did these, I do think I have a video on that, but just to show you real quick, I have craft cardstock, and then this is a 2 1/4 inch, let's see, yeah, 2 1/4 inch scallop punch that I punched out. And then I also, from the same paper, have this one, and it's a 1-inch scallop. And then I already have one of these punched out. And so I will, actually I like the edges a little bit darker, so I'll use my walnut stain ink and go around the edges of this piece, and this piece, and then layer it up like that. And then for the center part, I just take another little piece of scrap, punch that out, And then that will get glued right into the center. And then I will put a little gemstone right in the middle of that. So if you can use your imagination and kind of turn this into this, into this. So that's another little fun project. For the next page, I just had leftover Christmas scrap papers that were pretty thin. So I just went the whole distance all the way across. So a sample of that one is right here. And I just used, this is 1.5 inch by 3 inches long. I just made it into a simple little tag with a string at the top. So one thing that's nice about this is you can make your variations of sizes any size you want. I mean, you can have a huge tag, you can have real skinny ones. You know, of course, all of these can be tore out. So it's got a perforation here on the side, but you can use punches, you can use dies, whatever you like to bring that through, or just use your scissors or a trimmer and do it that way. So that's a fun one for that. And then this last one that I have, so for this one I just used a coffee stain and then a stamp with black ink on it. And I think it really turned out pretty. So the big thing for this is you'll notice it's still inside of the journal. I did not pull it out and then bring it over and coffee stain it all by dipping it in the water. Let me show you what I did and how quickly this will work. So I just pulled it up. I don't want it to stain everything behind it. So I just have this page itself. And I have just a little bit of water in a bowl. And then I have a couple of paper towels. And then some good old Taster's Choice instant coffee. What I'm going to do is put this coffee right in the center. We don't need a whole lot, maybe a tablespoon or so there. Move that out of the way. And then I'm just going to bunch this up around it and kind of make myself a little dauber from it. I should be doing this sideways so you can kind of see so it's not all the top. But I just kind of folded it all around and made myself a little dauber end with it. And what I'm going to do is just get that end wet a little bit. Get a little more wet here. Okay, I think that'll be just fine. And then I'm going to take it and just go back and forth. And if it seems like it gets a little dry, I'll get it a little more wet. As I kind of get it in there, there we go, it's getting more on there. And I'll clean my work surface off. Let me move this out of the way so I got room to work. There we go. I'll wipe this all down in just a minute. But I'm going to go over the whole thing. Just going back and forth, and like I said, if it gets too wet, I'll dab a little more water on there, or not wet enough. We'll just add a little more water until we get this whole thing full. There we go. And I think I like that pretty good. So now at this point, if you wanted, you could take a distress spray ink if you have it and spritz it across there. I just kind of liked it plain. I did not do that, but that would be an option that you could use. So you could go take this now and just set it out in the sun like this. But what I did was I just laid it on my countertop and just kind of, I'll just show you the angle here. But I put this end, the flat end, so it's hanging off, and this hanging down on my countertop. And it seemed to dry really straight, and it dried really quick because I didn't submerge the whole page into the water. Got that cleaned up, and I also hit that with a blow dryer so I could go ahead and show you this next step. And that dried in, I don't know, 15, 30 seconds. It was pretty quick. So for this page, I used just this stamp set, and it has, maybe it's easier to see this way, and it has music notes on it. I will try to link it below because it's really pretty, but you use the whole thing to it. So what I did, here it is here, and I just took my ink pad, just got the Recollections black ink, and I just took it to it this way because I don't have one of the acrylic blocks that is this big. So this worked just fine to do it like this. It's thick enough that it worked pretty well. And on this one you'll see I left down here at the bottom space. So if I want to use just this coffee stain for, like, I don't know, I could, you know, if I'm making a card, I could just use a stamp and ink it down here at the bottom and then cut that out to put on my card. I've also got some keys and little hearts that would be kind of cute on those kind. But this is just a fun way to have a base layer, kind of a masterboard, in a condensed sort of way to use whenever you want. Okay, that ought to be pretty good. Let's see. Flip that over. And this was actually a pretty good width for this one. Here at the top. Give it a nice press without moving it around too much so it doesn't get blurry. And that's how that looked. You can tell I missed some inking in there, but that's okay. Sometimes that's just the look we're going for and sometimes not. But with this, then I made just a little tag from it. Kind of see it behind that one, but that's how that one turned out. So the ideas can go on and on for all the different little projects you can do with this. But this was just a really fun way, and I don't know why. It's kind of like I'll see people have glue books, and I'm like, what do you, wasn't sure what you do with just glue books, but now I kind of understand. But I like using this as a masterboard idea. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful, blessed day. Bye-bye.